My name is Mansoor. I basically head the payment technology, which again is the FinTech division of NetStratum. And thank you once again. It's 7:30 in the evening. We've grabbed you to wake you up and have a session, talk to you guys. So how are you feeling so far? Good? Oh, first time in Kochi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, first time in Kochi? Okay, fine. You like Kochi? Yes? Okay, that's nice, all right. So let me introduce the rest of the guys. It's going to be an interactive session. You can ask any questions you want and we'll try and answer to the best of our knowledge. So I come from a payments background. I used to work for MasterCard for the last 15 years. I have been with payments consulting for a very long time. And now my current role is basically helping NetStratum leverage fintechs and payment technology from India to the rest of the world. So the first factor or the first territory that I'm targeting is basically Dubai, which is actually the land of dreams. So my base is Dubai. So I have with me Mr. Jose Tattal. He's the CEO and co-founder of Ficom, which again is a fintech with 300 plus employees. He powers UPI, he powers RuPay, he powers NPCI. He's the platform behind Bangalore Airport as well. So he's on our expert panels. And I have Jyoti Verma. Jyoti is an ex-colleague plus a digitization expert. She has been in the payment space for a very long time, primarily in credit cards, transaction processing, and other sectors. And then, of course, all of you know Nazir. Nazir is the CEO for NetStratum. He's based out of the US, and because India is the cradle of innovation, I call it the cradle of innovation. Some of the biggest startups actually took rise from India. We see a huge opportunity for us to tap the space and push it to the outside world. So I'm going to ask if you guys have any questions so far. Any questions on the event? How's it going? Any feedback? Anything that you want to bring it up? Now is we're good so far? Yes? Okay, thank you. So my first question was to Jose, basically having a startup background, right, Jose? These are all the future of the innovation here in India. What do you think from a startup perspective, or when I go into a startup mode, what do you think I should be looking at? What are the few things that I should keep in mind? What are some of the abilities that I need to kind of kick off my dream as a startup or a fintech? Let's put it this way.
Thanks, Mansoor. Firstly, overwhelmed to see this representation, young students, and as Mansoor said, you're the future of the country. So, congrats for that. Jumping straight into the topic, so I've had the privilege of being associated with 2 startups in my career. I started my career with ICICI Bank, then quit within 3-4 years, realized startups was the way to go. And then got associated with the startup as a founding member, was there for almost 14 years till we exited through a sale to MasterCard. And then started all over again. So it's like a second innings for me. How many of you really want to get into the startup space? Quite a few. That's really encouraging. So, what do you think are the top 2 or 3 factors to decide the success of a startup? I know the question was aimed at me, but I'm just trying to understand, anyone?
A product which can influence masses, like which can help mass a lot of people.
Okay. So I think all of you are right. So there are, there's a research that was conducted across multiple startups, successful and failures across it. The third factor was the idea of the product. The idea, the concept as such. The second second most important factor was the execution. Not just having an idea is not enough, right? The idea, everyone gets an idea every second, but you need to execute it, translate it into a worthwhile product. And the single biggest factor to determine the success of a startup was timing. Startups who done some fantastic work, but maybe the time was not right. Now, from an economy perspective, I think India, the timing is absolutely right for you all to start off. There's government approvals. There's government. In fact, how many of you have read in just the budget last 2 days ago? There's a 1 lakh crore fund that has been set aside for young startup entrepreneurs. That's a lot of money, right? And so therefore, everything right from the government to various official departments, various subsidies, all of that is working in your favor. So I think timing it's the best possible time for all of you to get into the startups side. I think once you've established that this is the time for you to get into startup, the one thing that I would urge each and every one of you to do is, before you actually start, research the problem on hand. Do not, what I've seen personally is a lot of startups come with solutions and start hunting for a problem. That is not the way any startup is built. Identify a problem, and for that I keep repeating this in all my, the problem should be large enough to address. The problem should be, and you should also as a startup entrepreneur understand the monetization possibilities of the problem. Because if you're there as a startup just to, ensure you have a technology solution for something and you roll it out, but there's no way to monetize it, the startup may die a very fast death. So these are some things that you need to keep in mind. I think some of the top 2 or 3 things that I would really encourage you to keep in mind.
Cybersecurity, there is AML, there is risk. So, from your experience, especially on the payment space, I mean, what are some of the tips you can give these guys to, basically sharpen their approach, or, sharpen the technology skills to, get there out in the world?
Like Jules just said, I think I definitely echo what he said. I'm also quite intellectually overwhelmed. There's so much of grey matter in this room, it's unbelievable. So it's really lovely to be here, and thank you so much. In terms of, and I think I'll probably just pick off from where Joe's left it off as well, right? Key monetization is really very, very key. I think you definitely need to understand, is there a market for what you're actually looking for, right? Is there someone who's going to buy it? And so on and so forth. So that's very key. From a trend perspective, I think where, and I speak specifically probably of India, to whatever extent that I'm aware of, you're quite at a cusp or a real convergence in between, let's say, towards market maturity, right? The digital adoption is incredibly high. And I think COVID really added on to that. It really accelerated the digital adoption at several levels. The regulations are very favorable right now, right? Because the governments have opened up. UPI and all is such a phenomenal example of all of that. So at this particular point in time, because the story would have been probably slightly different a few years back, pre-pandemic, at this particular point in time, to answer your question, I think where 2 or 3 key trends that are emerging, or key aspects that one would focus on, and one cannot stress enough on this, is governance, right? Very, very key. And I wouldn't want to, but we are in the midst of PTM, right? And that's regulatory governance and things like that. It becomes the cornerstone of anything specifically with regards to personal finance management, right? Where you're looking at data, you need to have that very, very strong governance model built in, right? The second becomes security. There's cyber attacks, and one cannot emphasize enough, a lot of the governments, even around the world, are actually putting in a huge amount of capital just behind enhancing that cyber security. So I think it's really great, because the hackathon also focuses around all of these, so I'm really interested to hear your ideas. And the third, as of date, it is difficult to kind of monetize, but I kind of see this more in the sense of where at one point in time it was a buzzword, it will eventually become hygiene, and that's green fintech. Today it's a bit of a buzzword, right? Sustainability is a buzzword, it's a bit of a PR exercise. We need to get that, because I think monetization is a little bit of a blur, right? And the adoption rates is still in its very nascent stages. But it's only a matter of time where it will become hygiene. It will become the standard. And I say that specifically probably for India, because markets like Europe is already way up there. I think US, Nasir is completely way up there and actually probably leading as well. And it's seeing its impact, and it's already exercising its influence around the payment space as well, right? So in terms of when you're looking at scoring or any of those kind of things, there's already the whole sustainability scoring that's coming into play. So it's only a matter of time before India also sees that. So these are the three major focus areas specifically in the space of payments I see happening, and I don't know if
Just a question, Jyoti. So in terms of green fintech, we have seen a lot of advancement, especially in the MEA region. What do you think from India being India? What is the potential? What do you see in future for green tech, especially in India?
So green tech, and this is just purely personal view. Green tech, I think it's very, very early stages to stand on its own, right? I definitely see green tech as when I say of hygiene, it will eventually make its entry as being embedded with your payment solutions. What do I mean by that? I mean by that is when you're buying a certain product, you would at some stage want to know what's the kind of carbon consumption that's going on, right? And how much of carbon are you going to be consuming because if you bought that product. Is that particular product sustainable or not? Does the merchant have a sustainability score, right? So it's only a matter of time where, and some of these governments are already there. So today, and UAE is already well underway with that in terms of creating a sustainability report that is almost going to be mandated to the market to be submitted every year, right? And these are baby steps, but it's underway. So at this particular point in time, if there is a consumer-focused application or a solution that's being constructed, then today the way I see this happening is it's embedded. For now, probably a nice to have, but it's only a matter of time before it becomes an absolute necessity.
Thank you, Gaurav. So, Nazir, over to you. So, again, I think I opened with the remarks saying that has made a lot of entry into now. We're working on UPI initiation in the UAE because they have accepted. Oman has accepted. As new as yesterday, France has confirmed that they will be accepting UPI from India, I think from the second quarter of 2024. From basically a US and an Africa perspective, what do you see is the next steps on innovation? Or Africa is already ahead in terms of mobile wallets and peer-to-peer. So I mean, you've worked in Congo, you've actually worked in Zambia. So what do you see is a key aspect that the startups or the fintechs can focus in those part of the world?
I would say the UPI, before UPI, really, if you were to look at it, US was leading everything, right? US was leading the innovation before. Now US is kind of behind innovation. India is leading innovation. Like countries like African countries, they're looking at India right now rather than looking at US actually, because they know that if it works in India, if it works in a developing country like India, they can definitely take that technology and implement in Africa and make it work. So that being said, we see that community commerce, for instance, which is UPI is behind the community commerce, which has been implemented in Gambia. We looked at it before, at Gambian government has embraced that one and said, okay, we're going to endorse this one and we're going to start with community commerce with UPI behind it actually. So most of the African countries, I would say, they would go with technologies which is coming up in India, which really takes a good stand for all of us here, saying that, okay, something we built here, not only for Indian market, there's another market, all the developing country market, we would be able to take it because UPI, they are embarrassing, like they're basically taking these technologies, the UPI or NPCI, for instance, whatever you guys are working on. they are taking those technologies, and anything you guys build, whether it's a consumer app, business app, related to fintech, there's a big market out there. You don't have to look at US because US thinks that, okay, it's kind of saturated market on this one. And basically they want to dominate on, Visa and MasterCard want to dominate on all the card payments and everything. So they wouldn't, even for digitalization or digital currencies standpoint, US was pushing back. It's not the US because US runs on a capitalist, it's a capitalist country. So when you come up with digital currencies, you are looking at, it's more of a decentralized system, right? You cannot be one-man show kind of thing, right? Which was US always dictating on that one-man show. Right now they're looking at it and say, oh no, all this digitalization coming in, or digital currencies coming in, dollar is not going to be the currency which will be trading, people will be trading on. So eventually they're going to kind of push back on that. But there's a big market outside of US. If you look at African market, you can look at some of the European market actually. So they are really taking what we are building in India actually. That's what I was saying.
So what I'm hearing is the emerging markets are favoring a lighter architecture, lighter transaction processing rather than the huge cumbersome networks like the schemes like Visa or MasterCard. And then we're looking for lighter solutions. That's basically
that's on the card solution, right?
No, basically the payment solution.
Yeah, payment solution.
Payment side.
And if you were to look at it, even on before, there was only one way of sending money out, right? Like if you don't have SWIFT, any cross-border payments, if you were to look at it before, SWIFT was the only way you could just do a cross-border payment. And they dictate all the fees and everything. What they would say that this is how much it's going to cost. Now look at it, how we do people-to-people payment, or like you can just send a payment from US to here, within a minute you get the payment, without even going through the SWIFT network now, actually. Some of the other networks are coming up. I mean, that's when we look at it, most countries are looking at it and say, oh no, we don't have to just go with the traditional method, right? I mean, we're gonna go with non-traditional, but again, security is a big concern, because the way it used to be like, okay, if you go non-traditional, you are risking yourself to have a big fraud in that whole transaction. But
if you have any questions, the panel, please ask them now.
I think you should ask questions.
You should ask questions. There's a, I know, what you call, I think 60 years of experience in here, so you need to, sorry, 80, including me. So there's a lot of experience in here, so please feel free to ask any question.
You guys should, if you think that your technology is like what you're working on, it has nothing to do with the hackathon side, but you wanted to get an expert opinion on whether that would fly actually, because you guys are young and you are still looking at the market, and you don't know that it's the technology that you're working on or the idea you have is going to fly in the market or not. Just throw it up, or it don't have to be the same idea you were doing in the hackathon, but you may have other ideas. Just throw it on and we will answer as much as we know. But it's not that it's the final answer.
So I mean, from our experience, we have worked on some of the most sophisticated systems on fraud detection. So there's one called Brightidian, there's one called Falcon. So these are actually linked to transaction processing. I mean, Jose, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And they're all real time. It's all driven by machine learning. So basically, if you're a card holder or an account holder, it basically analyzes, but that's fairly expensive, because there is a lot of input that's required on the platform. Even on the, how do I say, the form factor for payments, basically we have technology which basically detects the way you punch in your PIN number on the ATM as well. How hard you have pressed, what are the fingers you use, what is the pattern, and it can even detect frauds to that level. So that's some of the the solutions that have been implemented by the big players across the globe. I mean, Jose, anything you'd like to?
No, so that's right. Just a couple of other things,
sure.
Just to take off from there. One is ONDC. I'm sure a lot of you all would have read a lot about ONDC. The jury is still out about how it will get deployed and stuff like that. But I think the way it's been conceptualized, it's out there for you guys to actually take advantage of it and build, multi-billion-dollar startups on that, right? It's a huge opportunity. Whatever the giants like Amazon and Flipkart have done, now today you are in a position to challenge them, just by virtue of this technology. So I think that's something that over the next, it may not happen in the next year or 2 years, but it's something that I think all of you need to at least read up on and get, this about. So that's one important area. The second is, I personally am a lot bullish on open banking. Again, I don't know how many of you have. So today, for example, if you were to, go in for a home loan, you got to give them a full bunch of papers on which your salary slips, your tax filing, your other loans that you've taken, your bank statements, all of that, and then the bank actually, determines your credit worthiness and then sanctions a loan. All of that is to go now. So what's going to happen is every place that you've taken a loan from, whether it's an NBFC or a bank, will start talking to each other digitally. So if you need a new loan, you need to just approve that bank that you're applying to get data from all your other sources. So imagine, that's the biggest green thing that can happen. You stop printing statements and you stop, all of that. But these are two areas that I personally feel. Today, it's alien to a lot of people. So people are trying to discover it more, focus on. Apart from, say, fraud detection, that's again an area. Apart from green fintech, these are few areas that at least I would recommend that you read up on and be involved.
Yeah. So since we spoke about green fintech, anyone on what green fintech could potentially stand for? No? Very good, brilliant. I don't know whether I should be happy I asked that question because now I have to answer it. So green fintech is, see the whole, I think green is in terms of just sustainability, right? Sustainability in simple English words means something that will go on, right? Just basic definition. And hence, I think when we say green fintech, sometimes it could be sort of misconstrued. Or basically, the myopic view is, we shouldn't cut trees, and we should, not have plastic. And absolutely, those are things that are damaging for the environment. So there's the environment piece that is very, very crucial, right? Because if you don't have a planet, well, you don't exist. Very simple, right? But there's also the people aspect of it, and which is more often than not really. So which is why if you actually kind of expand, and this is a classic terminology, I'm sure you would have come across it, it's called ESG, right? So that's environment, which is the planet. There's the social, which is really the people, and G stands for governance, right? So green fintech is really covering all of that, and one critical aspect of green fintech is also inclusion, which means financial inclusion, right? So if you actually look at fintech space, and something that I was just reading up as well, during the pandemic time, specifically around India, so there are still about 46%. So if you actually look at the Indian population, 46% are still financially excluded. What does that mean? It means that 46% of the population, roundabout, don't quote me, but this is what I read, 46% of people are either underserved, right? So they have access, but they don't actually have the right access to financial instrument, or they do not have access at all. These are people in the rural areas. So, and you can imagine these are places which are really remote, and going back to Nazir's point, right? Again, from an Africa and India perspective, you look at scale, you look at geography, you look at the size, and you also look at patches of probably urbanization. You have a huge sort of rural population where India is so at the forefront of actually trying to solve for and making leaps and bounds, right? UK is just one of the beautiful examples which has been rolled out. So financial inclusion is a very key element to that, where people in remote areas have access to a financial payment instrument. Why do I need access to financial payment instrument? Can anyone please answer? Please. need to have access to a bank? Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly right. Beautiful answers. So one is that it ensures that it's a form of my identity, right? It ensures that I am existing in the financial system. That's the entry point. That entry point helps me then establish a certain level of credit worthiness, which then, whether I'm a business person or I'm a personal person, I'm a consumer, right? I can then use for either requesting for a loan for business or for personal stuff. And that then helps with cash flow and management and so on and so forth. So you see, and you're actually including all of these into the economy. So the economy only goes that much more stronger. So actually it has a lot more legs, and it's a very, very crucial part of things where fintechs seem to have the speed, the flexibility, and obviously that kind of intent and the level of innovation that's required to kind of reach to this specific space. So I'm sorry I took so much time, but but I just thought that's great.
Give us a real-time example for
There are so many examples of green fintech.
Carbon capture.
So
What we did in the UAE would be a good example.
So I can, so again, green fintech, like I said, let's be very clear. We've got E, which is the planet, S, which is the people, and then G is of course governance, right? How do you ensure that it is working the way we think it should work, right? That's really the oversight part of it. So when you say green fintech, did you mean E or S?
from the example that you gave, it covered S and G, but I was wondering about E, how it will.
Yeah, so there are many, so from an environment perspective, now again I'm quoting data points, but it says that basically by 2030 the carbon emissions should not go up to a certain point, right? And that's really what the global entire, all of these nations, the COP28 this recently happened in the UAE and things like that, all the nations are really focusing on, because the ozone layer is heating up and there's, obviously there's all these sort of climatic conditions that's happening. One of the key points is really just the personal consumption, right? You've got 7.5 billion people. Everyone's kind of, if you burn plastic, that's what happens. Now for you and me, how do I play a role in something like climate change? Like, I go to school, I go to college, I go to the supermarket, I come back, right? What is that particular role? And that was really answered by, again, fintechs, who actually came up with a carbon calculator. What does a carbon calculator simply do? It says if you go to a supermarket, right, any Reliance market or whatever, you make a purchase using your card or basically it's a payment transaction. That particular payment transaction has an approved methodology. It's basically, it tells you, you've spent, let's say, 1,230 rupees on buying something. That particular purchase transaction equates to so much carbon, right? How is that calculated? There's a whole methodology behind it, right? In some of the very evolved markets, they even go down into the actual SKU level data, right? Which is that, did you buy something sustainable or did you buy a plastic bag? But it throws up a carbon score, right? It tells you that this is my carbon emission as me, as Jyoti, for this month, right? It's in a way trying to make me aware, because in order for me to take action, I need to first get into the awareness level, right? Only if I'm aware, then tomorrow I will, if I keep looking at that in my statements, and then if I then get into a benchmark or a peer review, saying that people like you, like an Amazon shows up, right? People like you are actually only emitting 600, let's say, kilograms worth of carbon, where I am really emitting 1,500 kilograms. That's not great. It's not a great talking point, right? My kids might turn around and say, Mummy, what are we doing wrong, right? So that then helps me to take action, and that can then lead to multiple action. So one of the action is where you go ahead and plant trees, you spend responsibly, you use more and more organic bags and so on and so forth. So that is one of the classic things that happened in the UAE. And of course, the government continues to be at the forefront of really pushing this, right? So carbon calculator, for example, across all your utility bill, electricity, water bill, you get your carbon consumption. You not only get your carbon consumption, it's there in every single, along with your, you've spent so much of water, you've spent so much of electricity, you've consumed, so much of electricity. This is your carbon consumption for this month. And it also tells you, by the way, would you like to know how you can reduce it? So you see, this is government's way of increasing the awareness so that at one point in time you can take action, and there are a lot of people who are taking that kind of action as well. Does that help? Does that help answer your question? Sorry, long answer, but yeah.
I was just wondering if our solution only covered SNG part of it, ESG. Can we call a solution?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You need not cover all the three aspects.
Yes.
Any one.
Yeah. Yeah. So G is kind of intrinsic in that, because like I said, governance is nothing but making sure that it is working the way it should ideally work, or that the way that you promise. But yeah, exactly like what Jose mentioned is either E or S.
Like what the students lack in when it comes to hackathons.
Answer. So, basically it's your idea, right? I mean, we've been in the industry for a long time. We have some ideas. We only look at the needs of the people. So because we have to run a company or we have to pay a lot of people's salaries, we only look at to see how we can make money to do that. Actually, so we only look at the needs. But people like you don't have that problem. Actually, your mind is all open and nice, right? I mean, you can look at it and say, I can think outside the box, right? I don't have to worry about my guys whether they're getting paid or not. So we look at people like you to come in with brand new ideas that we could never think of it actually.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just add one thing? I was always taught that you need to address a need or a pain point. So if you can do that, I mean, you're students, right? I mean, you are freshers, you're entering the world of, how do I say, competition and what's happening in the world. So if you can keep, it's just even what I tell my kids, look at what a need is or what a pain point you're trying to address. That will help you, focus on the idea better and make it work. So that's just, it's my personal thought. I mean, everybody agrees. Sorry, any more questions?
So just a heads up.
Tomorrow's presentation, we want the need to be spelled out very clearly.
So he's giving you a tip.
Yes. So and ask on both sides, please. We always, and this is not just yourselves, this is as business people, this is organizations as well. Please answer what's in it for me from both sides. Right? Stand on the business side, you're the fintech, you're rolling out a solution. You need to be able to convince yourself, I'm assuming that's the basic. You will say what's in it for me, right? Monetization, Joe spoke about it, right? But please do not forget to ask that from the customer's perspective as well. So close that chain. Because otherwise you're having a monologue. You only say, oh yes, great idea, market need, we've got the research, we've got the data point. But the customer who goes there to buy that solution, or the company who's going to be buying your solution, needs to be able to really understand what's in it for them as well. So please do that on both sides, and that's exactly what we're all saying. Please understand that market need.
What are the major challenges to start the fintech business? Actually, I believe two things, right? The one is the security, and second is the government regulations, right? Apart from that, anything is there?
See, one is, as you said, fintech is all about money, right? So that building that trust, especially if you are going to be a B2C product, or even B2B in that sense, building that trust is very, very important, and that will take time, right? So, so one is you will need to have sufficient capital to build to some scale, because that's when you prove your product market fit to your investors and you get in capital and stuff like that. So the idea should be good, of course, the need should be there. You should be able to demonstrate trust. Now, the point that you mentioned about compliance, right? You referred to compliance. See, when you're building a fintech, compliance should never be, tick in the box type of a thing. It has to be basic hygiene in anything you do. Because again, it boils down to trust, right? So if you're not compliant, because if you're not compliant with RBI rules, if you're not compliant with government rules, very soon the trust that your customers, consumers have in you will erode. Because finally it's again, whether it's giving you money or taking money from you, whether you're lending fintech or whatever, that to build that trust is not easy and to maintain that trust is more difficult. So I think compliance should become part and parcel of your growth strategy. It should not be construed key, I've got to do compliance, so there's an extra cost to it. No, it is basic hygiene, so
Yeah.
compliance can never be separated from a fintech.
All my friends, when they went for a course in AI or ML or web development, I did it on blockchain. And even my seniors, only a few of them know about blockchain. When I asked my seniors for help, just a few, I can count them on fingers, answered my question. So I really want to know the future blockchain holds. Like, is there any relevance of blockchain in future?
Of course, there is a good relevance in blockchain, right? Because it's blockchain. When we talk about blockchain, we always think like it's all crypto, right? Blockchain has nothing to do with crypto, but it's just that crypto uses blockchain as one of the medium to do it, right? So don't think that because crypto is not allowed in India, blockchain is not. So they are not tied. So that's the first thing you need to clear your mind. That's why a lot of people if we just said everyone is going to AI, ML, and nobody is going to blockchain. They're like, okay, no, we are not going to get any job in India because Indian government is not allowing crypto to be part of our currency thing. So that's a very bad myth, though, right? They are not related. So that being said, there are a lot of opportunities in blockchain. There is private blockchain, which people run actual systems in bigger enterprises with blockchain itself. Nothing to do, maybe something to do with fintech and maybe not anything to do with fintech actually, right? It could be on blockchain. So definitely there's always good opportunities in blockchain.
It's on used cases, right? So in our part of the world where we come from, a lot of the land registration happens on blockchain in the UAE, yes. Yeah, so title deeds, everything, the government tokens is all on blockchain. We are also working on an innovative, blockchain idea. I mean, if that materializes, you'll see some progress from next time as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.